well, welcome everybody to our presentation for the Dallas EEI 2023 summer internship. So we have our interns here today that came to the University of North Texas because our program is a partnership between the City of Dallas and the University of North Texas, which we appreciate very much. And so we have every summer an internship where we have high schoolers from all over the City of Dallas join us to do different research and all kinds of different activities. And they're going to tell you a little bit about what they did over the summer. And so we would just like to thank everybody for being here and the opportunities that we're given to give to them from the City of Dallas. And also, Dr. Thompson, thank you for starting the program back in 2006. And so we've tried every year to do this program. And so I'm going to pass it off to them to let them introduce and explain what they did this summer. Are you all ready?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, let me back up. Go ahead.
So, good morning, City Council officials, parents, friends, and all those who came out to support us in your presentation today. Again, just like Nick said, we thank you all so much for being here, and we are this year's EEI interns. And before we tell you a little bit about ourselves, we're going to tell you a little bit about what we're going to be talking to you about today. All right, okay. So obviously, after we introduce ourselves, we'll get into the how, the what, and the why of EEI, go into depth about what we did as interns this summer, and then explain the research we did and the research EEI plans to do in future years. Then of course, we'll wrap it up in a conclusion. So, let's get into introductions. Hello. My name is Patience Wiley. This is actually my second time doing this internship. I recently graduated from Booker T. Washington High School for the Performing and Visual Arts, and I will be attending Rice University this fall. Thank you. I'll be attending Rice University this fall to study psychology and business. A little fun fact about me is that I'm actually a poet, and this past year I got to perform some of my poetry on the same stage and on the same night as Erykah Badu, if you know who that is. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shayana Funches, and I graduated from Skyline High School, and I'll be attending Texas A&M University of Commerce, studying psychology. And a fun fact about me is I crochet blankets.
Hello, my name is Emmett Sanders. I recently graduated from Barack Obama Mellage Academy, and I'll be attending University of North Texas for the next 4 years. Studying cybersecurity and minoring in data analytics. One fun fact about me, I do photography and play baseball for the same team I do photography for.
Hello, my name is Brandon Vasquez, and I am a writing senior at the School of Science and Engineering. A little fun fact about me is that I've been recently wanting to learn how to play the guitar.
Hi, my name is Kevin Hellman, and I'm also a rising senior at the School of Science and Engineering. And the fun fact about me is that I'm a music producer, and my next song releases in 2 days on Spotify.
Hello, everybody. My name is Blue Monreal. I'm going to be a senior in the fall at Irma and Gale Young Women's Leadership School. And the fun fact about me is that I'm an artist, and I'm currently on a mission to draw 100 birds.
Hello, my name is Crystal Martinez. I'm a graduate from WTY, and I'm attending Texas Tech to major in animal science. And a fun fact about me is I like to draw, paint, and most importantly, I love animals.
Hello, my name is Clarita Robledo, and I'm a senior early college graduate from Winston College, and I'm currently enrolled to Texas Women's University to continue studying education while double majoring in business. And a fun fact about me is that I grew up in Mexico, and I would love to travel in the future.
Hello, my name is Dan Walther. I'm a recent graduate from the School of Science and Engineering, and I'm headed off to Rochester Institute of Technology for Mechatronics Engineering. A fun fact about me is that I'm a recent Eagle Scout, and my ceremony is in just a few days. So, now that you know a little bit about us, let's tell you about the program that we're a part of. What is EEI? For those of you that might not know, EEI is the Environmental Education Initiative. It was created in 2006, 17 years of operation. We serve the communities in and around Dallas. Who's the target? All of Dallas. Our research is specifically for elementary schools, but that's specific to our research, which Kevin will go into later. And community events. On the left, we have Christina and Nick at EarthX, and on the right, we have Crystal at teaching kids during homeschool day at the Dallas Zoo. These kind of events are just absolutely wonderful in reaching out to various communities in and around Dallas. They really do a lot. So, into the classroom. EEI is unique when it comes to presenting in elementary schools in that it utilizes TEKS-aligned lessons presented by its certified instructors. For being honest, kind of anyone can go into an elementary school and just present so long as the school lets them. But EEI really sets itself apart as an educational program by following these guidelines. For instance, in second grade classrooms, the kids will learn about the urban water cycle, what makes water clean, and how each of them can conserve water in their own home. But it's not just lessons. In fourth grade, they create aquifers to filter water. And they also do experiments and get take-home items like coloring books, toothbrush holders, and commitment cards that they sign, pledging to use less water. Everything that we do commits these kids more to our goals of water conservation. So why do we want them to connect? Obviously, we want them to care about water conservation. But we also want to create a sort of cascading effect, as shown by this comic made by Emmett. The more that we can convince these kids to care about water conservation, the more likely they are to go home and convince their parents to care about water conservation. Maybe their parents tell their friends about water conservation. Everything that we do to make these kids care about our mission makes it more likely that we'll create an outsized impact on our local community. In conjunction with elementary lessons, we have our professional development program. This program is dedicated to teaching teachers about EEI's mission. In this program, they learn not just how to conserve water, but how to teach this mission to their students. They experience the labs that they can administer, and they gain the confidence to better incorporate the science into their classes. In elementary especially, making sure that the teachers can effectively communicate our ideas is crucial to creating lasting impacts. And moving on, Brandon will cover EEI's role in secondary education.
Thank you, Dane. Now let me tell you a little bit more about EEI's secondary school programs. For middle school students, EEI has the education need to be more discussion-based. EEI brings physical modules to the school to spark talking points and to discuss with the students about water conservation and water quality. Middle school students still sign commitment cards. However, middle school students have to explain exactly how they're going to help conserve water in their homes and how they're going to keep their water clean at home. For high school students, EEI has the education be more hands-on. For example, EEI offers a 2-year program called the EEI Summit, in which the first year involves the students researching and proposing a project regarding water conservation to EEI representatives. In the second year, students perform the project and present the results to judges. This summit acts as not only a learning opportunity for the students, but also allows them to actively help out, figure out new ways to improve water conservation efforts. Now, as you can see, I was actually part of the EEI Summit last year. This is me working on all my projects, and this is at the EEI Summit event last year. This summit is actually how I found out about this internship and why I became interested in this internship. And I even did my interview at the EEI Summit, which is pretty interesting. Now to talk to you more about the internship, Shanna here will explain.
Thank you very much. Okay, now for the other part of the high school. Now for the other programs the EEI offers, the summer internship, which is why we're here today. So this summer, we read research articles, went on field trips, spoke to professors, and also created maps using GIS software. And for each experience, we created what we call reactions, which are content for EEI to post on their social media. And these are just a few reactions we made. And this was a way for us to share our experience and what we got from each experience. So these are the 4 research articles that we read over. and each team, we were all broken up into teams to then present. So this here is us presenting. This gave us a chance to get more background information about water topics and also EEI. And this also gave us a chance to practice for this presentation, but not only that, to identify our strengths and weaknesses. And this gave me future insight on how it'll probably be for me because I am starting college in the fall and I know we're going to be presenting. So now for Brandon to tell you more about our map building experience.
Thank you, Shay. Now let me explain to you what GIS is and what it's used for. GIS is a type of software for visualizing the data on the map in many different ways. This summer, we learned how to use GIS to build several different maps for the EEI team. Now, GIS stands for Geographical Information System, and almost every single profession you go into will need to have some sort of information displayed on the map in some sort of way, whether it's a major part of the job or just a very minor part. Now, there are many different softwares for using, many different programs for GIS, but we at Internship use one called ArcGIS. And as you can see on the screen, ArcGIS provides us with many different variables we can change to make every map we make unique. Now, I mentioned we used maps during our internship to make, and what we did, we made maps showcasing what schools have been impacted by EEI in the Dallas area. And what I mean by impacted is whether or not EEI has come and taught at the school about water conservation and water quality. Now, this specific map is one of all impacted and non-impacted elementary schools. It's one of the maps we made during the internship. As you can see, all of the blue stars represent impacted elementary schools, and all of the black stars represent non-impacted elementary schools. Many of the non-impacted elementary schools are in the North Dallas area, which Kevin will go into more detail on later. Now, the main purpose we made these maps is to show what areas EEI still needs to reach out to, and how far EEI's influence has spread. In this internship, we also went on several field trips, which Emmett will talk to you more about.
Thank you, Brandon. And now let's get to the more fun side of the internship, in my opinion. We got to go see the different water sources around Dallas, and even got to see how some of them were cleaned by using two different processes. The first one that we got to see was Bachman. We were able to be given a tour in which we went around and seeing the different processes, how they clean the water, the different chemicals, to make sure that the water was up to health code. It was actually beyond what the health code is recommended for all water sources. We got to also see the different components in which the waste and dirt was removed from the water. I personally got to talk with some of the coordinators and the workers there to see the different jobs that really don't require a college degree. I found that fascinating because we are always taught that you must go to college to get this big degree to make sure you live an amazing life. But in the end, it's not actually always true. They told me they would teach me step by step in each job, even working jobs that I wouldn't start off working at, and when I started with them. And they taught me they'll build me up from any education, from a high school GED to a college diploma, college degree, sorry. Here was actually some of our reactions to our tour, what we found informational from that tour, and yeah, you can take a moment to look at it. And next up, Brandon, go back to the next field trip.
Thank you, Emmett. Now, we were also giving a tour of the Central Wastewater Treatment Plant, in which we learned the several stages that wastewater goes through to be cleaned before it is sent back to local waterways. One of the stages which I thought was really interesting is a treatment filter, which you can see pictured on the bottom right. What this stage does is it pours water through a layer of rocks with microorganisms in them to simulate how water would be cleaned naturally in rivers. I thought that was really interesting. I also thought it was interesting how in certain stages of the facilities, you can spot small aquatic animals such as turtles. I just thought it was really surprising. We also made some reaction for this field trip, as you can see on the screen. Our main takeaways were the ways that the water was treated at the plant and how to keep your water clean at home. Now, Crystal will talk to you more about our next field trip.
Thank you, Brandon. Our next field trip was in Isle de Bois in French for Eyes of Novatories. Now, for this field trip, we had two trips. The first trip was to trace our leaf packs and write down our hypotheses, which is the future research I will talk about later in this presentation. Our second trip was to actually visit the water pump in Isle de Bois, along with the tour with the park ranger. Then, in which we also had the privilege to tour the dam that allows to control the water levels in lakes, in which we also had the amazing opportunity to talk with some engineers of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Now, phones weren't allowed in the building, but we were able to sneak a picture in the bridge in the middle. One important thing I learned about this is how many people depend on state parks like Isle de Bois. Therefore, Texas State Parks' mission is to conserve and to manage natural resources in Texas, such as fishing and creating outdoor opportunities for the use and enjoyment of people. And here are some of the reactions made by us interns and some of our biggest takeaways, aside from being one of the best field trips for me because it was my birthday, is that you could end up majoring in wildlife management and not end up dealing with any wildlife at all. Crazy, huh? And next up is Dane to talk about our next field trip.
Similar, though not the same vein to Isle de Bois, we also went to Lila, the Lake Lewisville Environmental Learning Area. So we actually went to Lila twice, once to place leaf packs and another to pick them up. But on our first trip there, it was actually our very first field trip out of the internship. One of the first things we did when we got there was we got a talk from the conservation manager, Mr. Richard Freyheit. He gave an amazing talk about Lila's unique place, not necessarily as a park, but not really as a preserve either. They do want people to come and interact with nature. But what really spoke to me was his job, conservation manager. He had essentially made a career out of loving nature. He wasn't really like a state park ranger. He wasn't managing people, don't set off fireworks, turn your music down. He was managing the plants and animals that made up the area itself. These jobs tend to not be quite as advertised, or at the very least they're less visible, and it introduced me to a type of job that I didn't know existed, and it prompted me to engage with more career-oriented discussions on later trips. So, while that was one of my biggest takeaways, the rest of us interns, our big takeaways were the leaf packs themselves, which Tris will go into later. On the left, we have one talking about the hikes into Lila to place the leaf packs. And on the right, we have one explaining what Lila itself is and what a leaf pack is, which you will learn about in a little bit. Now I'll pass it off to Patience.
Thank you. So, our last field trip was to the White Rock Pump Station to meet with Dallas's Water Quality Division. This trip was in 4 parts. So first, we got to enjoy the beautiful scenery that was White Rock Lake. It was really hot that day, and everyone else is really hot, but I, for one, enjoyed the heat, so I was having a really good time. Then when it was time, they took us inside the historic pump station to give us a presentation. It was there that we learned how through management and testing, they actually monitor source and tap water for all of Dallas. And we'll get into more detail about that later. They also gave us some information about the specialized projects that they do, like the Clean Rivers program, where they monitor public rivers to ensure that it's safe for the public to use, or their invasive species management, where they keep an eye on harmful species like the zebra mussel. And they even give us a little bit of information about how we can get a government job and get involved right after college by just going to the website and applying for whatever we think we qualify for. Then after the presentation, we actually got a chance to meet with the senior engineers who control all the pumps for the city of Dallas. They took us inside this control room where it seemed like with just a couple of computers, they monitored and managed all of Dallas water utilities, like water flow or storage. And while we weren't allowed to take pictures in this specific part of the facility, I still think it was really cool to see how this field trip connected with the others, because this is where they controlled water flow to and from places like Bachman, our central, the pictures you see here. And then the final portion of this field trip was the hands-on experience. I stated that I was in this field trip last year, but I was a part of this internship last year, but I didn't actually get to go on this field trip, so this part was my favorite. So after we put on our safety vests and walked down to the lake, we got to filling a bucket with lake water, and they actually let us use their equipment worth like thousands of dollars to get our own readings. We tested things like water temperature, depth, pH, and with just one probe. And I thought that was really cool because they said just a few decades earlier they had to use a lot more equipment and do it all by hand. And it's cool that with all this new advancement in technology, water testing is way more accessible to cities and way faster. Now, the actual qualified water testers will go out, will do generally the same thing, but they'll go out on a boat onto the lake, and they'll put the probe directly in the water, and they'll do this for all 6 source lakes once a month. And the information they gather is crucial to not only informing the city of Dallas and water treatment plants about what they need to be concerned about, but also informing the public about what immediate or upcoming health risks that the lakes could pose. And I, for one, am grateful that there are so many testing procedures in place to keep the water that we interact with safe. And that's why these reactions are so important, so that the public has the same realizations and the same information that we do when we go on these field trips. So like this one on the left that Karina made about the general information we were given on the field trip, or the one on the right that I made about White Rock Lake activities and whether they are deemed safe. And now Blue will introduce you to the next opportunity we have this summer, meeting with professors.
All right, so because our internship was focused on careers, we got the chance to talk with UNT professors about how they arrived to their positions, what problems they face, and what their daily lives looks like. And I'll pass it back to Patience, and she'll introduce you to our first professor.
Back again. So, Dr. Thompson, who's in the audience with us today, is a UNT associate professor and the founder of EEI, which is why we're here all today. And she actually visited us on our first day to welcome us into the internship and then give us information on 3 main things: resumes, research, and resilience in the interview room. So first, research. The biggest issue with the online landscape the way it is today is that people see something happening online, they go, oh, I'm going to research it. But what they really mean is that they're going to go home, pull out their phone, and just Google a bunch of stuff until they find what they're looking for. And Dr. Thompson's biggest point is that Googling does not equal research. With research, you have to have an idea, and you take this idea and you find evidence in support of or evidence against, and whatever answer you choose, you adjust and try again, whether it's an experiment, a survey, whatever you chose. So if you just Googled something and you found the answer, you didn't do research, you just did a Google search. And then she also gave us information on how to write a successful resume. Googling successful resumes in your field or maybe commonly associated skills can help you either adjust your resume or find some new skills to get the job that you want. And then finally, adding on to the resumes, she also taught us about interviewing skills. Like Blue said, this year we focused on the careers that we can get in the field. And as you can imagine, we were given many answers, from quality testers to lab assistants to management to wildlife experts. We were left with a lot of new career paths to consider. But of course, you can't just walk into a building and start your job. There's a lot of pieces. And one of the most important being the interview. So Dr. Thompson went into depth about the do's and the don'ts. And while I'm sure most of you in this room are very well versed in an interview and how to get a job, we were giving some helpful tips, like how to prepare beforehand or to write a follow-up essay to make sure that you are known in their head, which is what a majority of our first reactions during this internship were about, the do's and the don'ts. But for me, my biggest takeaway was the balance between 2 things. You obviously don't want to overextend yourself. If you know a job is not right for you, then don't apply and put yourself through that process. But if you aren't sure, if you think it's a little bit interesting, then try it. You may not even get the job, but every time you apply for a job and do an interview, you're building a skill, and that's where the resilience really shines. The worst they can say is no, but there is a vast majority of jobs and opportunities out there, and you never know. You may end up loving a job you never even knew existed. So, I'll pass it. Is this coming? Is you? Good. Oh, I'm sorry. I did actively to Dr. Kennedy. My fault.
All right, so Patience, love you for that. It's all right. So we're going to be talking about Dr. Kennedy. Dr. Kennedy is a UNT Regents professor of biology. He's also a bunch of things, but we're going to stick with the biology part for now. And he taught us about benthic invertebrates, in other words, little bugs in the freshwater. And he talked to us about benthic invertebrates because they can be used as bioindicators. And basically how he explained it was that because different bugs have different tolerances for pollution, By determining which species are absent or which species are present, we can tell what the water quality is by like just kind of looking around and poking around. And so this information was very important, especially for our leaf packs, which Crystal's going to talk about later. We keep saying that, but we'll get to it. And I thought that was pretty cool. He also talked to us about water ecosystems and terrestrial ecosystems and how they're connected. So basically an example of that is when a dead leaf falls into the water, that dead leaf becomes food for benthic invertebrates, and those benthic invertebrates become food for everything else. So they can't really exist without each other. And I found that connection really interesting because I never knew about that. And he also presented us some of the bugs that he caught, which was kind of disturbing when he like wiggled them in front of the camera. But at the same time, I couldn't really look away because they were really interesting. And here are some of the reactions that we made to Dr. Kennedy's talk. I made some Pokemon cards that are identification cards that are inspired by Pokemon cards, so to make them easier to identify them. And on the right, Dane made an infographic talking about the relationship between the water ecosystems and terrestrial ecosystems. And now I'll pass it on to Kevin, and he'll talk about Dr. Mager and Dr. Roberts.
All right, thank you, Blue. So this is Dr. Mager, and he is also a UNT professor in biology, specializing in aquatic toxicology and fish physiology. So his research mainly focuses on the different environmental stressors that affect aquatic life, and this encompasses the effects that crude oil, algal blooms, pesticides, and many other things have on fish. So, for example, one of the studies that he did talked about the effect that PAHs had on zebrafish larvae. PAHs are basically environmental pollutants, and in this case, they're released from the crude oil during oil spills. And from this study, Dr. Mager concluded that exposure to crude oil impeded the development of organs in zebrafish by reducing their cardiac output. So their heart wasn't able to bring enough blood to the organs and let them develop. I think my favorite part about visiting Dr. Mager's lab was being able to see all of the cool equipment that he used to carry out his research. As you can see on the bottom left corner, there's a cute little treadmill for fish that he uses to measure the stamina of the fish in his study. So yeah, that was really interesting. And Dr. Roberts specializes in environmental toxicology, meaning that he also works with environmental stressors. Dr. Roberts and Dr. Mager have both done extensive research on the impact of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill a while back, and that's why it's okay. Sorry, 1 second. And furthermore, Dr. Roberts also explained how although large-scale oil spills like the Deepwater Horizon occur quite rarely, there's still many other oil spills happening weekly, and they do not have a negligible impact on the environment, which is why it's so important to understand the effect they have on our environment. And one more thing that Dr. Roberts highlighted was that the companies responsible for oil spills actually do have to pay a fine, which is determined by the economic value of the damage. So what's really cool about this is that people actually place a dollar value on the value of a dead fish. So now here are some of the reactions that we did for Dr. Mager and Dr. Roberts. As you can see on the left, there's a reaction on the importance of aquatic or environmental toxicologists, and on the right, you can see the harmful effects of oil spills. I'll pass it to Dane for Brian Wheeler.
Brian Wheeler's a great guy. Emmett, would you mind?
Might as well, I guess. Thank you. Thank you, Dane and Kevin. Well, Brian Wheeler. He runs an outreach program on campus, North Texas, Denton, to help educate kids K through 12 about the environment, teach them more what they didn't know. Brian told us about the importance of our watershed, of knowing it. Do any of you know your own watershed? Well, what's the name of it is? I'm sorry. Yes, Junior Basin. Thank you. Oh, it does. I'm sorry. I forgot to put it up there. Mainly because while knowing it, it helps us to identify where a waste or oil spill might start in one of our rivers. By knowing our own watershed and seeing where the oil travels down from, we're able to identify the source of it and target it more quickly and control it. Here was the reaction I made for Brian after he told us about the watersheds and stuff. And this was as a water topic to help explain what the general question the EEI team gets asked a bunch of times whenever they go out. And here is Carita to dive deeper into water topics.
Okay. Thank you, Emmett. And now I will be telling you all our water topics and showing you some of the projects we made while working in this internship. So far you have seen what we have done this summer in form of reactions. The reactions were created to show what we had gained from our experience. Water topics are a little bit different even though they seem similar because they're created for the public and they answer some of the most asked questions that EI receives from students, teachers, and community members. We also create this water topics to help our society understand and help change their perspective about water conservation. And now I will be showing you some of the infographics we made and giving you an overview of the water topics we talked about in this internship, such as if bottled water is safer than tap water. And this infographics are shared to the public and they answer some of the water misconceptions they have. Just like we can remove salt water from our ocean waters through desalination and how our green infrastructure can help save our water sources. And now I'll hand you to Krista, in which she will now talk about the EI summer research.
Thank you, Clarita. Now to the anticipated section we've been waiting for. There are two sections for this research, the field research, in which I will talk about in a moment, and the water consumption research, in which Kevin will talk about after I talk about my field research. Okay, so before we talk about what we found in these leaf packs, let's talk about what are leaf packs. Leaf packs happen in nature, where a bunch of leaves bunch up in a stream, and our leaf packs are mesh nets that are filled with leaves native to the ecosystem. Now, it is only important to take native leaves around the ecosystem because then the native species will recognize their native home. And these leaf packs are placed for about 3 to 4 weeks in a nearby stream. Leaf packs are used to look at water quality through a biotic index, as Dr. Kennedy mentioned. These organisms in the body of water move into the leaf packs, and when you pull them out, you identify these organisms to determine the water quality. Now, what did we think was going to happen with our leaf packs? So in Lila, we decided to place one leaf pack near the dam. We decided to place it there because the water level was low and we wanted to see the changes through this leaf pack. Many of us predicted that since the large body of water and the strong occurrence of this leaf pack might not make it, our second leaf pack was also in Lila, but inside the forest in the stream. We decided to place it there because of the low human interaction and the natural leaf packs around. For this leaf pack, we predicted that since the low human interaction and the natural leaf packs around, that it would be able to survive and make it. Our last leaf pad was in Isle de Bois. We decided to place it in the reservoir, to be specific, in a still water reservoir. For this leaf pad, we were not so sure about this leaf pad due to the still water and not being able to submerge all the way down, but we still had no doubt that there was still a chance that this leaf pad might make it. Now moving on, what happened with our leaf packs? Unfortunately, the leaf pack that was placed near the dam was cut, but it is safe to say that we were right about this leaf pack. Unfortunately, this is not an ideal location for our future field research. Our second leaf pack in Nila, thankfully, it was still there. We found actually a lot of microinvertebrates, as you see listed. These microinvertebrates were so small to a human eye, but we were able to see them with the magnifying glass. Based on the organisms we did find, we determined that the water quality was fair, meaning that it was not that good nor that bad, but able to maintain an ecosystem. Great. Last but not least, our leaf pack in Isle de Bois. We performed the same procedures as the previous leaf packs, and we were right. We didn't find as many as diverse microinvertebrates like in Lila, but we were able to see some microinvertebrates, as you see listed. Based on the organisms we did find, we determined that the water quality was poor. Although the water was still, it still showed a fair amount of life. This showed me that a lot can live in one single drop of water. Now I will hand you to Kevin to talk about our water consumption research.
All right, thank you, Crystal. So now that you know a bit about the field research that we did this summer, let's talk about EEI's other research avenue. So the purpose of our water consumption research is to find out if school visits are effective, and like Dane and Brandon mentioned earlier, EEI does visit schools and give hands-on and discussion-based lessons to students. So how do we do our research? Well, we do this by comparing the water levels, the water usage levels of the impacted zip codes before and after the school visits. And if the water levels are lower, then we know that the school visits are potentially effective. In 2013, EEI targeted the 75224 zip code and impacted those 4 elementary school zones. And basically from this, we can see that the interns were able to prove that the zip code's water usage level was statistically significantly lower after the 4 elementary schools were visited. And basically this means that the school visits are potentially effective and should be continued in the future. So if EEI visits public, private, and charter schools of all different age groups and grade levels, why do we specifically target elementary public schools? Visiting elementary schools is a fundamental part of our research because it allows us to interact with an accurate representation of the zip code's population. Students are placed into their elementary schools based on school zones and where they live. On the other hand, middle schools and high schools tend to have students from outside of the zip code. And here are all of the variables in our research, which could all change depending on where we do the study. But for our study, the price of water, irrigation ordinance, and marketing all stay the same throughout the city of Dallas. And precipitation, temperature, and geographic regions remain pretty much the same because of where it is located. And we get the data for the income, housing, a number of housing units, and population from the census, which is done by zip code, and therefore we can claim that those also stay constant. However, since EEI isn't able to visit every single school, education remains variable. So in 2019, interns created this map right here to highlight the different areas of high and low water usage. And using this information, we can find out which schools we need to visit in order to spread awareness for water conservation. And if you guys recall from one of Brandon's earlier slides, most of the non-impacted schools are in the North Dallas area where people tend to use more water. So last year, EEI tried to target the 75248 and 75225 zip codes and those specific elementary schools. Unfortunately, since many of the elementary schools, or many of the schools in general, were still recovering from the quarantine, we weren't able to get into a lot of these schools. However, recently some schools have opened up to us, and we are optimistic that we can get into these schools in the future. So before we move on, let's talk about why it's so important to try getting into these schools again. So in the 2013 study, we found that after visiting the 4 elementary schools, the average household water usage dropped by 502 gallons per home per month. And if we do a bit of math over there, we're looking at nearly 30 million gallons of water saved in a single year. And keep in mind that this study uses a lower water usage level zip code, so imagine how many millions of gallons we could potentially save if we're able to get into those higher water usage areas. Now, I'll pass it to Dane for real this time so we can talk to you guys about what to expect next year.
Thank you, Kevin. So Kevin has talked to you about our water consumption research, and Crystal has talked about our field research over this past summer. And now let's go into the future of EEI's research. One second. There we go. So we ran into a number of issues this year with our field research. For instance, one of the leaf packs was lost. The line was cut, and we effectively lost a third of our research opportunities. And so for next year, we could talk with Dallas's Water Quality Division to find perhaps more accessible and safer locations to place our leaf packs. Another thing we could do is we ran into a number of environmental stressors this year, specifically the heat. We placed these leaf packs in our first week of the internship, mid-June, and we picked them up in early July, 5 weeks later. And by this point, it was much hotter, and it was actually after season. So a lot of potential water bugs had either died to heat or just flown off. And so for next year, we believe that EEI personnel could perhaps place the leaf packs before the internship, and then interns could pick them up on their first week. This would maintain the integrity of the study much more effectively than it did this year. Another thing is on-site chemical testing. So we use leaf packs and the biotic index they give us to determine water quality. But on-site chemical testing, with help from Dallas's Water Quality Division, could help reinforce or just contrast our findings by the leaf packs and give the next year's interns more experience with that side of water quality testing. Now, for our water consumption research, Kevin has already covered most of this, but to summarize, we want to keep trying to impact these high water use areas, specifically in the North Dallas area. Now, in the past few years, many schools have been either in the midst of or recovering from COVID, and so they've had safety restrictions in place, and we just couldn't gain access to them. But as schools continue to open up, we're optimistic that we can impact these areas of Dallas that need our work the most. And now, I will pass it off to Clarita for our takeaways.
Before we conclude, we would love to share some of our biggest takeaways when working this internship.
Back to me. All right. So, in water are going nowhere. Bachman and Central both talked about their 50-year plans. The water capacity of Dallas is only increasing, and the industry is only expanding. And so, at least I'm optimistic that jobs in this field the opportunities are only becoming more available.
For me, I just had a surprising just how many opportunities are available to you. You just take the effort to look, and you can't just wait for one to come to you.
My biggest takeaway was that opportunities come in many different shapes and sizes. And I say this because there can be something you've been interested in for a while, then something new come along, and that's where you take your career path.
Personally, I find comfort in knowing that there's a career waiting out for me somewhere. As you said many times throughout this internship, there's a lot of jobs out there that don't require a degree or provide on-site training. So no matter the path I'm on now, I now have the tools to get a job I want if I ever want to switch.
For me, there were so many different jobs around Dallas that aren't advertised that you don't need a degree for, but all it does is require networking, knowing people that know people, and getting different internships and connecting.
For me, it was the research part and the hiking and going and like researching about leaf tags, and I learned that a lot can live in one single drop of water.
For me, it was really enlightening to find out that there were so many really cool STEM jobs that you could get without even having a college degree. For example, at the Central Wastewater Treatment Plant, we talked to some of the senior engineers, and they said that, like, if you have a high school diploma, they'll walk you through every single step so you can be successful in their career.
All right, so for me, I had a feeling that I wanted to go into the environmental science field before, but it was honestly really reassuring in this internship to know that there's many pathways to go with it and that there's many opportunities, and I'm pretty much secure. Well, while working this internship, I came to learn that there's a variety of jobs and careers out there waiting for us, and that we just have to look into the right places and keep ourselves consistent in order to obtain something in the future. In conclusion, working with the EAI team as an intern was a wonderful experience, not only for me, but for the whole team, because we didn't only learn about water conservation methods, but we also got to inform ourselves about our environmental needs and how our future careers can help our community for the better and improve our water quality in the future. And now to end things up, we would love to thank everyone for being here, and we now open for any questions, comments, and concerns. Thank you.